Some stories never make it into the history books. It's not because they didn't matter, or because they weren't important. It's because the people who lived them never asked to be remembered. They weren't seeking fame or glory. They were just ordinary people, living their lives, who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances. This is one of those stories. It's about an everyday American, someone you might pass on the street without a second glance. But when the moment came, he made a choice that most of us could never imagine. A choice that changed everything, not for the world, but for the people he saved. This isn't a story of a hero from a textbook. It's the story of quiet courage that deserves to be told. Join me as we uncover the incredible tale of a forgotten sacrifice. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden stories from our past. He never thought of himself as someone who would matter in history. He wasn't the strongest man in his unit. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He didn't tell stories about bravery, and he didn't dream of medals. He was just an American from a town small enough that everyone recognized each other as footsteps on a wooden porch. Mornings there were quiet, not silent, but calm in a way cities never were. The day began with the sound of doors opening, trucks starting, and coffee being poured into chipped mugs that had belonged to the same families for years. Life moved at a steady pace. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. He grew up believing that character was something you proved, not something you talked about. You showed up on time. You helped when help was needed. You kept your word. Those weren't rules written down anywhere. They were simply how things were done. Before the war, his life had followed a path so ordinary, it felt permanent. Work in the mornings. Evenings spent with family. Weekends that looked almost exactly like the ones before them. He didn't mind the predictability. There was comfort in it, a sense that tomorrow would look familiar. He liked knowing the streets by memory. He liked recognizing voices before faces. He liked that people waved, even if they didn't know why. He had plans, but they were small plans. Honest ones. A steady job, a house of his own, one day. Maybe children running across the same yards he once crossed as a boy. Nothing grand, nothing meant to impress anyone. He never imagined leaving. History changed that. It arrived not with explosions or sirens, but with voices on the radio that sounded too calm for the words they were saying. Conversations stopped mid. People leaned closer to hear updates they didn't fully understand yet. Newspapers began arriving with headlines that didn't feel distant anymore. The world, which had once seemed far away from his town, suddenly felt close enough to reach through the front door. Even then, life didn't stop stories open. Work continued. Meals were shared at the same tables, but something had shifted. Attention lingered in conversations, a weight behind words that hadn't been there before. He felt it at church, where the pews filled more than usual, not because anyone was told to go, but because silence in a shared space felt better than silence alone. He felt it at home, in the way his parents spoke more softly in the evenings, as if trying not to disturb something fragile hanging in the air. Across the country, young men like him were asking themselves the same question. What happens if I do nothing? He didn't think about glory. He didn't imagine battle scenes or hero moments. He thought about responsibility, about the idea that sometimes doing your part meant stepping away from everything familiar. The decision didn't come all at once. It built slowly, like pressure rising in a sealed room. Each news report, each conversation, each quiet moment where he felt the weight of the world growing heavier, until one morning, he understood that staying felt harder than leaving. The goodbye was quiet. No speeches, no parade, just hands held a little longer than usual, a hug that said more than words could manage. His mother tried to smile the whole time. His father didn't say much at all, just placed a firm hand on his shoulder, the kind of gesture that carried pride and fear in equal measure. "I'll be back," he said. It sounded natural then. Certain. Like a promise that belonged to the future. He carried that promise with him as the bus pulled away, as his town shrank behind him, as the life he knew became something he could only hold in memory. He thought the hardest part was leaving home. He didn't know yet that the hardest part would be the choice waiting for him on a morning months later. when he would have to decide whether he still deserved to go back. The first thing he noticed was how quickly the world grew larger once he left the only place he had ever known. Train stations replaced dirt roads. Strange accents replaced familiar voices. Faces passed by that would never be seen again. Everything felt temporary, like he was moving through a world that didn't belong to him. Training came fast. There was no gentle transition between who he had been and who he was expected to become. Days started before sunrise and ended long after the body wanted rest. Marching, drills, repetition, over and over until movements stopped belonging to thought and started belonging to instinct. He learned how to pack quickly, how to move without hesitation, how to stay quiet even when every part of him wanted to ask questions. The uniform felt heavier than its fabric suggested, not because of the weight on his shoulders, but because of what it meant. It marked a line between the life he knew and the one unfolding ahead, a line that could not be stepped back across whenever he wished. He met men from places he had only seen on maps. Big cities, small farms, coastal towns, mountain communities. They were different in speech, in habits, in the way they carried themselves. But underneath, they shared the same quiet understanding. They were all far from home, and none of them knew when or if they would return. Some filled the silence with jokes. Others talked about what they would do when the war was over, as if saying it out loud could make it more certain. He mostly listened. At night, when the noise faded and the world felt still, he thought about the small details he missed. The sound of the screen, door at his house, the smell of dinner cooking, the way evenings stretched longer back home. He wrote letters whenever he could. He didn't write about fear. He didn't write about uncertainty. He didn't describe the exhaustion that settled into his bones. Instead, he wrote about ordinary things. The weather, the men he trained with, small moments that felt safe to share. He wanted home to imagine him steady, strong, unchanged. Weeks turned into months. Orders replaced routine, movement replaced waiting. The world expanded again, across oceans, into places he had never heard of, under skies that looked the same but felt entirely different. The first true signs of war didn't arrive with explosions. They arrived with tension, long stretches of waiting, where every sound seemed closer than it was. Nights where sleep came in fragments, days where silence felt heavier than noise. He learned to read the faces around him, to notice when someone's laughter came a little too quickly, when someone stared too long at nothing, when someone spoke less than usual. No one said they were afraid, but everyone understood. Letters from home became more important than ever. Each envelope carried the weight of another world, one where life still followed familiar rules, where days had predictable endings, where people talked about future plans without hesitation. He read each letter slowly. Sometimes, more than once, he imagined the room where it had been written. The table, the window, the light falling across the paper. He held those images carefully, like fragile things that could slip away if he wasn't paying attention. He still believed he would return. He didn't know when. He didn't know how. But the promise he had made, "I'll be back," still felt possible. Then came the morning everything shifted. It started like any other. Orders passed down, equipment checked, movements planned, nothing unusual. Until his name was called. At first, he thought he had misheard. But it came again. He had been cleared for a rotation home. The words didn't land all at once. They moved slowly, like something too heavy to lift in a single moment. Home, return, leave. Words he had held at a distance suddenly stood right in front of him. He didn't cheer. He didn't celebrate. There was an unspoken understanding among the men. Good news was kept quiet, out of respect, out of fairness, out of the knowledge that not everyone would hear their name called. But inside, something changed. For the first time in months, the future felt real again. Not imagined, not distant, real enough to touch. That night, he wrote a letter he planned to mail the next day. He told them he might be home soon. He didn't say exactly when. He didn't want to risk disappointment, but the words felt lighter than any he had written before. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. Morning would come, transport would leave, and he would finally be on his way back to the life he had promised to return to. He didn't know yet that before sunrise, a different name would need that seat more than he did. He barely slept that night. Not because of fear, not because of danger, but because his mind kept returning to one thought. He had almost stopped allowing himself to have. He was going home. He imagined the road leading to his house, the sound of gravel under tires, the way the front door would open, the surprise on familiar faces. He didn't let the image stay too long. Hope could be fragile, but it was there, quiet and steady. Before sunrise, he was already awake, sitting with his back against a wooden crate, the folded letter still in his pocket. Then everything changed. A patrol returned early. The men were quieter than usual. No jokes, no tired smiles, just quick movement and urgent voices calling for a medic. One of the soldiers had been hit, not a dramatic injury. No shouting, no chaos, just the kind of wound that drained strength slowly, leaving the body fighting to keep up. His breathing was uneven. His hands trembled as he tried to stay still. The medics worked fast, but their faces said what their voices didn't. He needed evacuation. There was only one transport leaving that morning, and only one open seat. The paperwork said it belonged to him. For a moment, no one spoke. They didn't need to. Every man standing there understood the situation with painful clarity. Evacuation meant survival. Staying meant uncertainty. The wounded soldier was young. He had arrived only weeks earlier. He still spoke about home with confidence, not hope. He still believed the war was something he would pass through, not something that would shape him forever. Now he lay pale against the stretcher, trying not to show how much it hurt. An officer glanced toward him. The look wasn't a command. It wasn't even a question. It was simply an acknowledgement that the decision existed. This was his seat. His months of waiting, his family's prayers, his promise that he would come back. All of it rested in a moment that felt strangely quiet. He looked at the wounded soldier. Then, he did something that didn't feel like bravery. It felt like instinct. "Put him on," he said. His voice was calm, almost casual, like he was offering to switch places in a line. The officer hesitated, then nodded. Orders shifted. The wounded soldier was lifted carefully and carried toward the transport. As the vehicle started, dust rising behind it, he didn't wave. He didn't watch for long. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, feeling the folded letter against his chest. Someone beside him muttered, "You sure about that?" He shrugged. "Yeah," he said. "He needs it more." That was all. No speech, no recognition, just a decision made before breakfast. By midday, his name had been removed from the departure list. Paperwork adjusted. Schedules rewritten. The moment passed as quietly as it had come. He returned to his duties, carried equipment, followed orders, moved through the same terrain he had walked the day before. Only now, the future looked different. He didn't write home about what happened. In his next letter, he mentioned delays. Said Trevor had been postponed. Promised again that he would return when he could. He didn't want them to carry the weight of a choice they couldn't change. Weeks passed. Then, months. The war moved forward the way it always did. Slowly, relentlessly, without regard for plans made on quiet nights. The young soldier he had given his seat to survived. Made it May. He told people about the man who had stepped back without hesitation. But records were messy. Units shifted, names blurred together. The story traveled, but the man at its center faded into the background of a war filled with countless acts no one had time to write down. Back at the front, he didn't regret the choice. But sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet and the mind had too much room to wander, he would touch the place in his pocket where the letter had once been and wonder what it would have felt like to send it. He still believed he would go home one day. He just didn't know that the next time his name would be spoken in a report, it wouldn't be for a departure. It would be for something else entirely. The war did not slow down. It never did, for anyone. Days continued the same way they always had orders. Movement, waiting, brief moments of tension, followed by longer stretches of exhaustion. He carried on quietly. No one treated him differently after that morning. No one saluted him for it. No one brought it up again. In war, there was no time to linger on choices already made. Every man carried something similar. A moment, a decision, a memory that didn't belong in conversation. Then came another mission. Another night where visibility disappeared and the world narrowed to the sound of boots, distant movement, and the steady beat of a heart trying not to race ahead of thought. It happened quickly. The kind of moment that never feels dramatic from the inside. No music, no slow motion, just confusion, noise, and instinct moving faster than reason. When morning came, some men answered, "Roll call." Some did not. His name was spoken and met with silence. Reports were written, locations marked. Units moved on. War didn't stop to explain anything. Back home, life followed a different clock. The seasons changed. Leaves fell, snow came and melted. Spring returned. Every day carried a quiet hope that the next knock on the door might bring news. Then one afternoon, a government car stopped outside a small house that had never wanted to see it. The letter was formal, brief, careful with its words. Missing in action. Not gone. Not confirmed. No explanation. No certainty. His family read it more than once, as if the meaning might change between lines. Missing left space for hope, and for years, hope remained. They set an extra place at the table longer than anyone admitted. They kept his room the way he had left it. They told stories about him in the present tense, not the past, because as long as nothing was certain, everything was still possible. The young soldier he had saved grew older. He married, had children, built a life shaped by a morning he never forgot. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit in a quiet house and think about the man who had stepped back and said, "Put him on." He didn't know where that man was buried. He didn't know if he was buried at all. But he knew that every birthday, every holiday, every ordinary day he lived had been made possible by a decision that lasted only a few seconds. He told his children that story, not as a tale of war, but as a lesson about responsibility, about quiet courage, about how the most important choices rarely come with time to prepare. Years passed. The war became history. Dates in textbooks, documentaries on television, names carved into memorials far from the streets where ordinary people lived. But his name was never carved anywhere. No parade passed through his hometown in his honor. No statue stood where he once walked. His story lived only in two places in the family who never stopped waiting, and in the life of the man who came home instead. History often remembers the loudest moments, but a nation is shaped just as much by the quiet ones. By decisions made without witnesses, by sacrifices offered without expectation, by ordinary people who never asked to be remembered. He was supposed to go home that day. Instead, he gave his seat to another soldier, and somewhere, in a house filled with the sounds of a life that almost didn't happen, his choice echoed through every ordinary moment that followed. The world kept turning. Children grew up. Families gathered for dinners. Laughter filled rooms that might have been silent. All because, before sunrise on a morning long forgotten by history, one man decided that someone else needed to go home more than he did. Some heroes are known. Others are simply lived. And in that quiet difference, the weight of their sacrifice remains.